Good morning, everyone. Okay, it's day 22 of my 30-day IG Live challenge. If you know me by now, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm all about being practical. Okay, it's great to have highfalutin concepts and philosophies and theologies, but at the end of the day, we need to know how to live it, right? So, this is a question that one of you sent me. Again, I wanted to try and cover it earlier, but yesterday I didn't have the time. So this is the question: how to deal with people who project their own insecurities on others. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that this is a familiar thing. I'm pretty sure that we all have the experience, maybe, of having someone project their insecurities on us. So I'm going to reframe or kind of like tweak this question a bit. I'm not going to be talking about in general about how to deal with people who project their own insecurities on others, because really it's not our business. Unless they are projecting their insecurities onto us, then it's our business, right? And that's what the interior journey tries to respond to. So I asked this person if they could give me an example, make it a little bit more concrete, right? A little bit more concrete as to what they mean by when others project their insecurities. And this was the elaboration. It says, so for example, I expressed concerns over something because I'm looking for a solution. So this is the example that a person gave about someone else projecting their insecurity on them. I express concerns over something because I'm looking for a solution. However, the person immediately jumps to the conclusion that I should be prepared to feel perpetual disappointment for the rest of my life. This is untrue because it doesn't bother me in that way. I'm only looking to find solutions, and I'm not actually feeling disappointed. But that particular individual assumes I am feeling disappointment. Sorry, I need to look at my larger screen because my phone screen is being blocked by announcements. So the said individual assumes I am feeling disappointment because that's what this person, the individual, has experienced. So their own feelings are projected onto me. I have tried to deny it in the past, but this person would insist that I must be feeling in that way. Okay, so this other person insists that I must be feeling that way that he or she feels. Okay, so what's happening is this other person is projecting and kind of imposing their perspective. So whatever's coloring their own experience onto your experience, right? And you are expressing that you feel like you're kind of being pressured or forced to accept this other person's interpretation of how you are feeling. So in a sense, you're not actually even, your own true feelings on how you see the situation is not being seen, heard, acknowledged. You can't be you. Okay, so that's how I would, so that's how I would reframe or express or articulate the issue here, right? When somebody else projects their insecurities onto you. Okay. How can we tie this specific issue or problem of people projecting their insecurities onto us, onto the interior journey? I think the central question that many of us are asking is always, how can we remain centered, like grounded, free, and still loving and kind in difficult situations and difficult relationships, right? That's the general question. How can I remain centered, free, still remain authentic, be myself, and also loving in difficult situations, such as when other people are projecting their insecurities onto me? So I think one thing to acknowledge first is to bear in mind and to really remember is that we all look at life at life through tinted glasses. We look at others through tinted glasses, and others look at us through their tinted glasses, right? I mean, we all have a particular perspective that's kind of colored by our experiences, colored by our wounds, colored by our insecurities. So the first thing to remember is it's both ways. Whenever we're interacting with someone else, there are two perspectives. And both for the other person and for ourselves, our insecurities and our fears often make up that tint in our glasses, okay? Which is why so often, whether it's in my static posts, my written posts, carousel posts on Instagram, or in my podcast, and even in the lives that I've been talking about, I will make reference to beholding the real. Behold, right? To behold is to look at something in a way that doesn't try to impose our perspective, but ability to see reality as it is. To behold the real. Spiritually speaking, it's often a contemplative practice that allows us to enter that ability to be able to see what is for what is, and not for what we think it should be, not for what we want it to be, so it's without our projection, right? So beholding the real is a very central part of the interior journey as well, the contemplative practice that allows us to make the journey into greater integration, right? Beholding the real. So having insecurities projected onto us, or us projecting our insecurities onto other people, is kind of like the opposite of beholding the real, okay? We can't help it. So that it's just that actually sometimes is the reality that we need to behold, right? Sometimes that is the current reality that we need to accept, that we are projecting our insecurities onto others, or that others are projecting their insecurity onto us. Okay, so now I'm going to share something. I'm going to share a slide. It's going to be a bit small on this screen because this is actually a keynote slide that I use for teaching purposes. So I'm actually giving kind of like a free class today with this. But I want to be able to share this understanding with you because I think it's going to be helpful. All right. I always talk about the 3 layers of life. Okay, in my podcast, episode 4, I give the analogy of the avocado, and earlier in this series of lives, I've also again been talking about these 3 layers of life. The outer layer of our interactions with people, circumstances, the inner layer, our emotions, our feelings, our thoughts, and the inner core. Okay, so understanding how we encounter people through these 3 layers, or what actually happens in us, is going to be helpful in answering or responding to this question of how do I deal with somebody who's projecting their insecurities onto me. Okay, so in the outer layer, so this is the cycle of encounter. Okay, what happens when we encounter someone or a situation? In the outer layer, something impacts me from my circumstance or my environment. So in this case, for example, the circumstance that you are encountering is somebody's projecting their insecurity onto you, right? This person is insisting that you're feeling something that you're not. So that's what's happening in the outer layer. The inner layer then, what happens in the outer layer then impacts, or kind of like, with your inner layer, this event impacts my emotions, my thoughts, my physical sensations. So think about it. For the person who asked this question, you didn't go into that. I mean, you weren't required to. I didn't ask you to. But you didn't share what you felt or what went on in you when that person projected their insecurities onto you. But I'm sure something was happening inside you, right? So I want you to revisit, what did you feel? What sensations did you feel in your body, physical sensations? What emotions did you feel when you were experiencing that person insisting that you felt a way that you didn't feel, all right? What thoughts maybe were going on in your mind? You may not be aware, usually day-to-day, that all that's happening, but how you respond in the inner layer will then also connect and impact how you see yourself and how you feel yourself, all right? So imagine, let's say, if this was a parent and, this is a tendency or a pattern that's been happening since you were a little kid, what you believe about yourself and how you feel about yourself would surely have been very impacted by how this person insists you actually feel, right? And how confident you may be about your own feelings, your own thoughts, your own convictions, that could be affected. So your core, the core identity would be impacted by what's coming from outside, right? But it's also from our core that then we begin to react or respond to what's going on, in the outside world. So how I feel about myself, how I see myself, impacts my beliefs about other people and about the world. So in this case, it may impact how you see this person who is projecting their insecurities onto you, right? Which then, in the sense, also causes you to have some kind of tint in looking at this person. It's going to be affected by how you feel, how that person makes you feel about yourself, right? And then how you see yourself and how you believe you see yourself impacting how you see that person will then impact, so now another link in the chain, it will impact how you act, how you respond. So my beliefs about myself, if you look at the number 5 in the slide, the last point of this, my beliefs about myself, about others and the world impact then my decisions, my words and my actions on my environment, right? So you see there's a chain of reactions that usually happen without our conscious awareness. We don't realize there's this connection going on, but there's a cycle of encounter, right? So when we talk about the becoming more integrated, becoming more authentic, it's about first becoming aware that there's this thing happening, all the time. And then is the question of how can I become more free as I go through this cycle of encounters, rather than just becoming a victim of circumstance and having to just react to what's happening from outside me. Okay, so let me see if I can. Okay, so the next slide here, still the same 3 layers. Okay, I call this the layers of prayer, also through the 3 layers. Okay, so this is in the context. These slides are from a leader spirituality, so it's an online course that I teach that will be actually launching again soon in August. I'll say a bit more about that at the end of today's live. But I teach this in the context of when leaders in whatever capacity, okay, whether you're a leader in your family or at work or you're exercising influence, you have to make decisions, you're responsible, accountable to people, you have to deal with triggers all the time, right? You have to deal with difficult situations all the time. How can you not be reactive, but be centered and grounded, or be more centered and more grounded, right? As a leader, understanding these 3 layers and then now understanding how to enter more mindfully into your core and come back out. All right. So the first layer, I would say, is like, so you talk to God. So this is prayer about what's happening, about the events and the decisions and or the needs that are happening. So again, back to this person's question. If you bring this into prayer, okay, this person is insisting I feel a certain way that I don't. It's upsetting me or whatever. Okay. I mean, so that's where you need to connect with what's going on in the second layer, about your inner layer, about how you actually really feel about it, right? So the degree to which you can be aware of and name and attune your emotions will also, of course, affect the depth of experience of prayer. So this kind of layers of prayer, it grows as we become more aware of what's going on inside us. Our prayer experience can deepen as well. Okay, so in the second, first, so you tell God what's going on, and then you connect with how you're feeling, and you bring that into that prayer, right? But the next layer is very crucial, is to listen and to remember and to receive who God says you are, the truth of who you are. So you see, the truth of who you are coming from God is going to be very different from the projection of that other person onto you. Okay, so this is where the medicine or the correction happens. Okay, you receive the truth about your identity and you rest in the healing and abiding love of God. Okay, I won't go into detail. I can't in this context into detail, but some examples of what that is. I do go in more depth in, let's say, in coaching situations and stuff like that. But I think you understand, all right? And if you already have an active prayer life, there are different ways to rest in this truth. So this counteracts the projection from other people, the insecurities that are being projected onto you. And then when you have received again this truth, it's like it's a regrounding and re-anchoring. Now your emotions, your thoughts, even your physical sensations, if you have been in this situation before, and maybe you're in adoration, or you've taken some time to be quiet, you go out for a walk in nature, you reconnect with the truth of what is and the truth of who you are, you find that your emotions shift, right? Now being more rooted in your true identity, right, or truer identity, you can now discern the movements of your emotions, your spirit, your thoughts. They are no longer, in a sense, controlling you, because you've refound your root, you've refound your ground, right? And then now you can look again at your emotions and your thoughts, which are also kind of like shifting now. And then you can sift and you can discern. There's a little bit more freedom once you are regrounded in who you are, right? Your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts, you're not just a victim to how overwhelming they might be. Then from here, you can carry out your discernment in response in the outer layer. You can choose, in that sense, how to respond to the person who has been projecting his or her insecurities onto you. Okay, so the layers of prayer, these 5 points, they kind of match onto the earlier slide with the 5 points of the cycle of encounter. Okay, so this is a practical way when you ask, how do I deal with someone who is projecting their insecurities on me? And it's something that I think that we actually go through every day. we're constantly doing it to one another. Okay, so it's a very, very good, very practical question. And my response is, actually the way to so-called deal with them is you have to go through these layers of prayer. And the thing about this interior journey is, the more seasoned you are in it, this going through these layers of prayer becomes something that you do instinctively, naturally, all the time. You don't need to necessarily wait until you have a half an hour to do that. Sometimes you still do. You still need to have a bit more space, but at least you have that awareness. Sometimes just 5 minutes of alone time or something like that, you can reconnect. You can kind of like breathe. This is upsetting me. How am I feeling? Lord, connect back to God. Let that connection remind you of who you are. The truth of who you are is in the relationship with God, not in this projection that somebody else is putting onto you. And then from that anchor, from that groundedness, you look at how you're feeling, you decide how you want to act. Okay, but then by doing this, you give yourself a bit more pause, that space between stimulus and response and a reaction, and you find some freedom to respond. Okay, so that's I'm going to stop sharing the slides. That's kind of like the how do I respond to other people's projections. Okay, now, of course, day to day, there are micro instances, like different times that somebody does that to us, right? But to become more able to respond graciously, gracefully, and with more freedom to instances when people project their insecurities or whatever else, their fears onto us, requires that longer journey. Because in a very concrete way, when I have a more integrated core identity, the more rooted I am, the clearer I am in who I am, very specifically, and who I am not, then I can more easily withstand another person's projections onto me. Okay, the more rooted I am in who I am and who I am not, the more grounded I am, and the more I can accept myself exactly where I am, which includes where I am in my journey, which includes maybe the fact that, I'm not that brave yet, or I'm not that generous. If I'm okay with that, whatever somebody else projects onto me, I can just take what is true. I can acknowledge what is true. It won't impact me so severely, right? Because when I am grounded in who I am and I'm clear about who I am, no matter how much somebody else wants me to feel a certain way or wants to believe something about me, I have something real and concrete to stand on, okay? So the reason why so many of us struggle when people project their insecurities on us is, although we don't want to take on that projection, we can't find the solid ground to stand on, so we can't withstand their projections. The only way we can have that solid ground to stand on so that other people's projections can come, but we won't lose our footing, is by this integration journey, is by our core getting more integrated and more whole, is by us getting clearer about who we are, right? And becoming more accepting of who we are. So in that sense, it's a matter of boundaries, right? It's actually it's a matter of emotional boundaries as well. I have the freedom to choose not to take on what someone else wants to put on me. What they think of me, what they want of me or want from me, what they believe about me, they can do that. I can't stop them. So here's the important thing. It's not our business really to try and stop someone else from projecting their insecurities on us. We would like to. I mean, I feel that way all the time, right? Like, stop projecting your insecurities on me. But you know what? I can't stop them from doing so. And a lot of times, I mean, they can't stop themselves from doing so unless they are making this interior journey themselves, right? And it takes time. We don't become immune to people's projections on us. Okay, so it's not like, oh, it's not going to bother me at all. I will not feel frustrated or annoyed or maybe insecure. We can still get triggered. We can still get activated, especially if that person who's projecting their insecurities onto us is someone significant, like a parent, for example. I mean, parents have an enormous power and influence over our identity and over our emotional life because, I mean, they've been with us all our life. They had that influence over us since we were babies, right? We were infants and tiny and little kids. But what happens is that as we become more seasoned in this interior journey, we know how to make this process into creating more space inside us to find our footing on solid ground again so that we can respond more freely, more graciously from the truth of who we are, right? So we can be affected, maybe a bit shaken by when something happens like that, somebody projects onto us. But if we know how to reground ourselves, then we can act from the truth of who we are as we remember who we are instead of just reacting defensively against others. Because when we are grounded in the truth of who we are, we realize, in a sense, there is not as much a need to defend ourselves because what that person believes or projects onto me does not really threaten who I am. Yeah, once I am grounded on solid ground again, right? I will feel threatened when it happens, but when I find my footing on the solid ground of who I am, then I don't need to feel threatened anymore. It's like the house that's built on rock rather than a house that's built on sand, right? The waves and the winds can come, the storms can come. When your house is built on rock, when your identity is built on rock, it can withstand, whatever people throw at you, right? With a bit of grounding. There is a really good story that I saw in, I believe it's a documentary film, The Wisdom of Trauma, that features Dr. Gabor Mate. I think it's in one of the clips later on in that film where it shows him talking to people, like he has these interactions with people. And there was this woman that he was speaking with, and she is in I think an abusive relationship or emotionally abusive relationship, and her partner often tells her she's stupid, right? And it hurts her, it really triggers her, right? And Dr. Gabor Mate, so Gabor asks her, so if your partner had told you, so this person has they have normal hair, okay? I mean, like, let's say it's just blonde or brunette, I don't know, but I think Gabor asked, what if he had told you, you have purple hair? And so it's not true, okay? She doesn't have purple hair. If your partner had told you have purple hair, would you feel triggered? Like, would you be upset? And the woman had said, no. Yeah, no. And Gabor asked her, why? Why wouldn't you be upset? Or why wouldn't you be triggered? And she said, well, because it's not true. I know it's not true. So see, so interesting, right? She knows it's not true that she has purple hair, so she's not triggered. But when her partner tells her that she's stupid, she gets triggered. Why is that? I think Gabor was trying to point to, is there some part of you that actually believes that you are stupid? And you don't want it to be true. And that's why you're so triggered when somebody tells you that you're stupid. Right? But if you are clear, I am not stupid. Just like you are so sure and confident that I don't have purple hair. I don't know what's wrong with your eyes. You're clearly not seeing correctly. I don't have purple hair. If somebody tells you that you're stupid, right, or projects whatever other insecurities onto you, can you imagine just having well, that's not true. I mean, you can keep thinking it. I can't stop you from believing that I have purple hair, but I know I don't. right? So I can keep my peace. That's what the work of integration can do for us, right? And practically speaking, this is the kind of thing that needs to happen in order for us to be able to live out all the ideals that we have about being loving, about being patient, about being kind, but at the same time about, being clear about who we are and not being a doormat, and having agency, all those things that we want, but we don't know how to do, is because we don't have an integrated core. Because when we do, then it'll be like this example of the purple hair. I hope you remember this story, because I really remember this story. I love this story. Whenever I get triggered now by somebody's projections onto me, I often think of this story, the purple hair story, right? Is it true? Is there some part of me that is upset because I actually agree with this person's assessment of me? And sometimes, again, if it's someone that you're in a significant relationship with, or the thing that person projects onto you happens to hit an area of vulnerability, because maybe your woundedness have caused you to actually have a self-belief, let's say that you're stupid, or that you're dumb, or that you're not good enough, not smart enough, not hardworking enough, whatever it is. We all have a different script, right? When somebody projects something onto us that hits and aligns with our script, our wounds, usually that's when we feel out of control and very triggered, and we will react very defensively. And that's when, so triggers can be helpful when we get activated. They are helpful in the context of the larger interior journey, because they actually show us where we need to fortify our core. Our triggers show us where there are vulnerabilities, that wounds that need to be healed. They are actually invitations, right? In the moment, we may not yet be able to respond as graciously and, as we would like to. But we know that over time, if we're making this interior journey, we do develop that ability to be more grounded and anchored, right? When we continue to make this journey, I want to say, okay, it's not even about not taking on the identity or the projection that somebody else puts onto us. At an even deeper level of integration, when you keep doing this, you may find even that you are able to empathize and have compassion for the person who is making that projection onto you without taking on that projection or losing your own freedom. Okay, so the second part is important. You may find that you can have empathy and compassion for that person who is projecting onto you, but you are not taking on that projection. You retain your freedom. That means there's a clear separation and boundary. Not only does that person not have that power, the projection not have the power to make you doubt who you are, like I said, this is at a higher or deeper level of integration. Okay, this won't happen until your integration has gone on for some time. You may even be able to see and recognize, wow, this person really does have these fears, and maybe have a sense of why they have that fear or that insecurity, why they're projecting it onto you. But you can let it be, and it doesn't change you from who you are. You maintain the freedom that you have to disagree with that person's projection. And even if that other person is frustrated and tries even harder to insist that you are what they think you are, or you should be what they want you to be, or that you feel what they insist that you feel, in a sense that you can let them insist and just disagree and you don't lose your freedom, right? Of course, the finer points of what that looks like depends on who it is. Is it somebody that's just passing in your life, somebody that's an acquaintance, somebody that's a colleague, or is it your spouse? Is it your parent, somebody that you are in a long-term relationship with? All that will impact the actual instance, the actual, living out of this relationship, right? But the first principles are the same. And that's why I always want to share with you the first principles. If you understand the first principles of how these things work, and then you understand how it connects with your specific and concrete situation, the context, first principles and context. Okay, first principles are universal. Context is very concrete and specific, and you need both to know how to live this journey, to know how to act. Okay, sometimes when we're just overwhelmed by our context, and we don't know the first principles, we are lost. But even if we just understand things in theory and we understand the first principles, but we don't know how to connect it and in praxis, live it out in context, we also get lost, right? We also don't know how to live it. So those are the two things that we need to learn to practice in our life. So this is the kind of thing that I'm about, or that my work is about, okay, that I hope it helps. I mean, even sessions like this, I know it helps you to begin to be aware. But really, you can imagine this takes a journey. This takes time, a longer length of time in learning how to practice it, in learning how to apply it to the concrete situation in your life. All right? So, like I mentioned earlier, the slides I shared just now were actually from an online course with 4 modules that I taught for the Catholic Leadership Center in Singapore. Okay, we are turning it, as in CLC also has agreed to turn it into an fully online course. So it's not going to be live teaching anymore. I used to teach it live online with recordings and resources and all that stuff. Now it's going to live online. So it's you can go through it anytime. Once you purchase it, you can access it. We are launching it in August. All right. I'm in the process right now of changing, creating the user experience, the learner experience, so that it flows. The main content is still going to be recording of my previous live teaching. All right. And the important thing is, when something like this online course is a mini version, but it's a journey. The 4 modules that I bring people through, they are not like 4 discrete modules, okay? They are curated and designed to flow. So someone mentioned to me that even this series of lives, she started watching from the first one. She said she appreciated how one kind of builds on the previous one. So there's a bit of logic, and like some fundamental principles are covered in the earlier sessions. That's important, okay? Because I think I'm also a teacher by heart, pedagogue. It's important to lay the groundwork and to bring people into the deeper, harder issues by bringing them through the fundamental issues first. Okay, the journey is important. The longer the curated journey, the deeper we can go, the greater the impact you can experience in your life. But even the 4 sessions of A Leader's Spirituality, in the past few runs that I've run, we've had really good feedback, really good impact, because again, there are first principles and there are quotes. There are kind of examples from scripture, and then there are practical journaling reflections, and like practical prompts to bring you deeper, to connect it with what's going on in your own life, to connect the first principles with what's going on in your own life. Okay, so if you are curious, or you want to, in a more systematic way, apply and experience what you've been hearing in this series of lives that I've been doing, then the call to action, I would say, what you can do is, if you are not already subscribed to my newsletter, subscribe to Begin Again. It's my monthly newsletter, because that's where I do share also my any new offers that are coming out, right? Or you can follow me on Instagram. I will share it here as well when there's more information, so that when A Leader's Spirituality launches in August, you will know what the options are that you have. If you are a Singaporean, or you reside in Singapore and you're a Catholic, there is an option to purchase it through CLC at a lower price for a 6-month access. Okay, it's a special arrangement I made with them so that it can be more available to more people. And for some people, maybe they just want to go through it, and 6 months is more than enough to have access to it. But if you're not from Singapore, or you're not Catholic, or you really love my content and you believe in how important it is, then there's another option to purchase it at a fuller price, and you can keep all the recordings and all the resources indefinitely. Okay, so that is today's live. I do not see any questions from those who are popping in for today's live, but I hope that this was helpful, especially to the person who had asked the question, and to those of you who also have the experience of having other people project their kind of insecurities onto you. I hope that what I shared in today's live will help you withstand those projections and retain your freedom. Okay, so thank you, and I will be back again tomorrow for day 23.